This conference will now be recorded.
Right. I'll give an abstract of the topic before I hand over to Mr. Prabhu. So the objective of this webinar is to compare visual ATDD and BDD Gherkins to analyze what is similar to show their difference in nature. Visual ATDD, which uses a graphical representation of test workflow to design and formulate test cases at the feature or business process level to be implemented to produce tests at the application and inter-application level. BDD Gherkins, which uses the given when then text format to define the test cases associated with the acceptance criteria of the refined user story to produce more atomic and user story centric test. Now with this, I would request Mr. Prabhu to take over from here and start the presentation.
Thanks, Anil. Thanks, Krunal. As a starter, let me just kind of share my screen. Is it visible?
Yes, it is visible.
Yeah, great.
Yes, Prabhu.
Yeah, thanks, Anil. Thanks, Krunal, for the wonderful introduction. Good morning, good afternoon, and good evening to everyone, depending upon your time zone. Thanks to all of you for taking time to attend this webinar today. And my specific thanks to Stephen for this wonderful opportunity to share my view on this topic, which is comparing visual ATDD and BDD Gherkin and their suitability in specific project settings. It is all the more important, I chose this topic today, given the inroads agile practices have made in, most of the project settings, and in particular, the enterprise software projects. That being said, let me I think there's a slight delay. Can you see the slide moving? Yeah, I guess it is. So there's a slight delay between me showing it and what I see on the GoToMeeting. Anyway, so this is going to be the a little piece of information about the webinar itself. So how I've structured it. So I intend to speak about visual ATDD and BDD Gherkin for about 30 minutes, followed by a short demonstration showing some of the topic points in action. The whole thing will be taking about an hour. I think that will leave us sufficient time for Q&A at the end. It's my kind request to participants to post their queries as informed by the stepping team. We will, collate and answer all the questions. If there are any time constraints, I will have them addressed offline in a suitable manner. And finally, your inputs on improving the webinar is much appreciated. So please take a moment to rate this webinar. We intend to actively conduct more such sessions going forward. Well, I guess a short intro has already been done, but let me just kind of give a gist of what it is. Like, Krunal indicated, I head the operations of smart testing in India. And smart testing is a software product vendor headquartered in France, specializing in functional testing solutions. I mean, solutions specifically intended for QA teams in the enterprise information system. We are a very innovative team. We are responsive and very attentive to our customers. And we are as a company, Smart Testing is a very active member of the French testing board, CFTL, and also of ISTQB, the International Software Testing and Quality Board. We do a lot of stuff with both these organizations. Smart Testing as a company is recognized worldwide for its expertise in model-based testing. It's an approach to designing tests based on modeling and automatic generation of tests. However, more globally, smart testing's unique know-how is in the ability to combine graphical representations and test. It is this particular know-how that we have applied in test design. Our products, currently revisit and modernizes the model-based testing, which is why with our flagship product, we are more willing to talk about visual test design and agile testing rather than the highly formal model-based testing itself. I'm also very happy to state that we have spent a large chunk of our R&D budget in past several years in developing AI and ML technologies to improve the way software testing is conducted by organizations. And I'm proud to say that today our customers experience futuristic AI technology in overcoming some of their testing challenges. Well, what will we be talking today? So back to business. So what will be the topic, and how do I intend to kind of have the content structured? Is I will start by providing a context to this webinar. I will discuss about the expression of need in Agile and the role visual ATDD and BDD Gherkin play in it. I will then move on to comparing the two approaches as to what is common to both of them and how visual ATDD and BDD Gherkin differ. In order to make this clearer, I intend to use an example, that will help illustrate the comparison better. So with all that I'm going to speak about in this 30-minute, the first 30 minutes, right? With that as the basis, I will summarize and share my view on what is the best way to apply each of these methods, which are the settings, right? So where they deliver the best value. And finally, I will show you in action some of the points discussed. A quick demo of designing tests visually for generating acceptance tests. That being said, let's just quickly jump into what we intend doing today. The scripting of acceptance tests, reinforcing the expression of need in Agile, it has become one of the strong practices of agility in the past few years. This is called ATDD. For those who may not have had the chance to look at such things, ATDD is acceptance test driven development, and BDD, behavior driven development, also sometimes called specification by example, or SBE for short. Behind these names, appear practices very similar in their philosophy, but different in their positioning and implementation. So in this webinar, we compare these two approaches positioned at different levels in the cycle of refining the expression of need in Agile. When I picked up this topic and communicated to Stephen, I was just kind of looking at a few things I would want to start about. But one thing kind of struck me very, very clearly, and I thought it will be wonderful to quote this when I start the session itself. Right. So in ISTQB and CFTL advanced level Agile tester syllabus, Gherkin BDD is expressed so very beautifully. Let me quote it here. Gherkin BDD is a technique in which developers, testers, and business representatives work together to analyze the requirements of a software system, formulate them using a shared language, and check them automatically. This is a crux, or the essence of what we are going to discuss today. And as a matter of fact, this is also true for visual ATDD, right? So how of these how do these approaches kind of address what I was just kind of talking about, expression of need itself, and how it is kind of represented? Visual ATDD uses a graphical representation of test workflow to discuss and to formulate test cases at the feature or the business process level to be implemented, to produce tests at the application or inter-application level. Think of it as end-to-end, comprising application at a broader level or a global level. Whereas BDD Gherkin, which uses the given, when, then text format to define the test cases associated with the acceptance criteria of the defined user story, will produce test at an atomic or a user story-centric level. So what I will be doing in the subsequent pages is that the objective is to compare visual ATDD and BDD Gherkin to recall what is similar and to show their differences in nature on a concrete example, so that it becomes even easier to understand. Like I said, these approaches share the same philosophy. The scripting of tests aim to strengthen the expression of need and the acceptance criteria through examples of use cases, and that becomes the acceptance tests themselves, right? And some of the key points to note here are the scripting of BDD and ATDD acceptance tests makes it possible to refine the expression of need in Agile in the form of testable examples. These acceptance test scenarios formalize what is expected of the software being refined and implemented, and they represent examples of the use of the software itself. The scripting of tests is shared and understandable by all members of the Agile team, be it business analysts, product owners, testers, developers. The keyword here is shared and understandable by all members. And another emerging concept of agility is, it is common for both these approaches, visual ATDD and BDD Gherkin. Acceptance test scenarios or living documentation of the product. You might wonder about, what about epics and user stories? Of course, yes, they are key drivers, but epics and user stories constitute volatile information. What I mean by that is when a user story is carried out in an iteration and accepted at the end of the test, this expression of need has only a historical value. Well, I mean, it doesn't really matter because it is not expected to be a repository of requirements. Whereas acceptance scenarios are intended to last over time. Why? In particular, because they are implemented in the automated regression tests being performed. Often these tests are, the teams are conscious about keeping them up to date with the application, and the readability of the scenarios allows, sharing them between the technical and non-technical members of the Agile team. Let me kind of jump quickly into what the differences look like. Of course, the format of the scenarios, as you can see in the slide, will be the first difference itself. In visual ATDD, the application journeys or the workflow are graphically represented by an activity flow diagram. Essentially, it describes the test workflow. Whereas in BDD Gherkin, the textual format is structured in a given, when, then, text, which many of you are familiar with. It essentially describes an individual scenario in terms of, contextualizing the test itself with the given part, and the action element in the test is there in the when part, and of course the then part will kind of show the expected result, just to kind of give it a simpler way of describing what it is. Beyond the format itself, the main difference appears between these two in terms of their positioning. The scripting of tests by the test workflow represents a global vision of the functionality or the business process covered by the application. While in Gherkin BDD, it is a question of covering, let's say, an atomic criterion for accepting the user story itself. Right? I mean, this is what I'd be describing further. Let me take an example to kind of run through what I just mentioned here. Let's take an example of a company, an hypothetical company that wishes to develop an internal management module for official travel within the HR software of the company, right? And let's say this project is obviously supported by the HR department. So assuming there is a workshop that's conducted for them to come over and talk about it, the way they would have expressed the need is something like uh, they will define the travel management as the system should make it possible to create a travel request by an employee, to validate the travel request by his or her manager, and to reimburse the expenses of this travel request by the HR department, right? So this is a very crisp and concise definition of the need. And I would want to quickly remind you here, this statement made by the HR department constitutes a minimal marketable feature. And the way Agile Alliance defines this is it is the minimal functionality that makes sense for the business. This minimal aspect makes it possible to focus on the first value to be delivered, which can subsequently be expanded and supplemented with much more. So this is the example I'm going to take to express the comparison between both these approaches in a little detailed manner. Let's see first how this would be represented within the visual ATDD context. The visual ATDD test workflow for this feature is what I've kind of shown in this slide. And I would imagine that this workflow would be discussed and formulated during a typical workshop, the Three Amigos workshop, right? So the HR department, who actually carry the need will obviously participate, and the product owner of the HR application itself will be obviously part of the team. And the team would typically have a tester and testers and developers as well. So when they have this visual workflow, the formulation aims to align the whole team on the different application paths to be implemented. So if I use this method, the acceptance test cases and the corresponding automated scripts will have to be derived directly from this approach by a tool that they use. That's when the value gets released. And typically, such a workshop, the teams will use a personas method, the archetypes of system users, right? So in this workflow, there are three personas that's been defined. Peter is an employee of the company, Emma is the manager, and Joe is a person from the HR department. Let's kind of see how well this can be augmented for us to produce those acceptance tests. Typically, each of these workflow elements will have an associated decision tables to refine the business rules, because that's key when we want to generate tests out of it. For example, I've just kind of shown in this slide one of the tables that kind of detail the business rules for refusing a request. So the manager will have to be kind of driven by certain business rule to refuse a travel request. It could be like here it could be travel is too expensive, or the travel is too long, or there could be other reasons. As illustrated here, the table that I'm showing here is associated with the second element in the workflow, validate travel request. So what will the outcome of this representation? So the scripting of visual ATDD test will consist of covering different use cases resulting from the test workflow. So what I've shown in this slide is the visual scenario, which I just spoke about a while ago, and it is highlighted in green. It is one of the examples of a test obtained from this workflow itself. And typically a tool will also have a textual equivalent to this visual representation as well. So each test scenario generated from the workflow will have a text version and then automation script version, again generated automatically by the tool. Yep. Let's kind of look at the same thing, within the BDD Gherkin context. So what I have done is just to give you an overview of the example I've taken, and I've just shown you in the past few slides as to how visual ATDD will kind of deal with it. Now, the same scenario, right? I'm showing you in this slide deck with BDD Gherkin being the medium. As you can see, BDD Gherkin is not the best medium for scripting examples at the global level of workflow. Think of end-to-end application journeys. If we try to write the previous test scenario in given, when, then format, we obviously reach the limits of readability of a Gherkin scenario. It becomes too long, too complex, due in particular to the role of Peter, Emma, and Joe being considered as well. And let you kindly note here, our example of travel management is rather oversimplified. In real project settings, the test workflows are more complex and lengthy than the one that I've just kind of described here. Imagine a BDD Gherkin scenario with more than 15 or 20 test steps. This is simply not possible because the readability and maintenance of BDD Gherkin scenarios then become very, very difficult. Well then, where does it fit in? Here's what I would want to kind of say. It's not the methodology itself, but it's rather about where we intend applying the methodology, right? So BDD Gherkin scenarios are really suitable for scripting the acceptance criteria for refined user stories and not for application or inter-application scenarios. That's the point I'm trying to dive here. It's not the right one for having end-to-end scenarios covering or spanning multiple applications. And good example of use of BDD Gherkin is to consider a test scenario at a level of a criterion for accepting a user story itself. What I've shown you here is a good example. Let's consider the user story, travel validation refusal with a particular criterion, which is how do you refuse when the travel request is too expensive. This is what the BDD Gherkin would look like for that particular scenario. So that being said, visual ATDD and BDD Gherkin are positioned at different levels in the agile need for expression cycle. The similarity is both are scripting use cases from examples. Both are the outcome of the workshops, the Three Amigos workshops conducted. Both go through the same discussion cycle, formulation, and automation, and both in many cases go through a keyword based automation. And the differences is the format itself, the first one, which I kind of spoke about. So the visual representation, the workflow plus decision tables for visual ATDD, and the given when then for BDD. And more importantly, the perspective, which is when you think of end-to-end scenarios, I would recommend visual ATDD. And when you think of a far more refined acceptance criteria of a user story being expressed, then BDD Gherkin could be one of them. Yep. And just to make sure that the comparison that I was trying to do is reinforced further, what you see here in this slide are the features with its own set of user stories and their associated acceptance criteria. I'm just trying to kind of put it together in this format so that I drive home my point easily. This is what constitutes the backlog. I mean, essentially, if you look at it, Please recollect the points I made a while ago about the minimum marketable feature, the minimum functionality that makes sense for the business itself, and that which brings value to the product. I will now explain using this visual representation how visual ATDD and BDD Gherkin are positioned. So at a feature level, we've got the workflow driving to kind of represent at that level, and then the individual acceptance criteria of an user story will become part of the decision tables component that I spoke about a while ago. Each row kind of expressing that need. That's how visual ATDD does it for this backlog to be treated. And let's look at the same thing for BDD Gherkin. So BDD Gherkin, you may see here that it is best suited to cover the acceptance criteria at the user story level. As you read each of the Gherkin expression, you find it readable when it covers the acceptance criteria at a user story level. This is unlike the example of Gherkin I showed a while ago in one of the slides. It was too complex, too lengthy when covering the same thing at a feature level. So how about automation, right? So how does each of these methods kind of support automation itself? So the automation of visual ATDD and BDD Gherkin, they also follow a similar approach. That's what we have seen in many of the settings. They are keywords based, and it's best when driven with data tables. In a visual ATDD, the test scripts are generated automatically by a tool that supports it, and developers or automation engineers will kind of focus on the technical aspects of connecting with the SUT itself through the keywords, right? So the granularity of which will kind of vary between projects, and we will touch upon this topic, right, while I just kind of quickly give you an example of a Robo Framework script being generated out of Jest, which is one of our products, for the scenario that we just spoke about a while ago, right? And we've got similar tools, equivalent tools that kind of help in scripting or generating automation scripts from BDD Gherkin as well. So which approach to choose, visual ATDD or BDD Gherkin? Well, I mean, I reiterate this quite a bit so that I drive home this point really well. So the that obviously the application obviously depends on your context and your goals in implementing the agile testing practices. If your context is that of business information system applications with business workflows to define and implement and test, then the visual ATDD approach is relevant because it allows you to involve business oriented roles in concrete discussions on the examples of application path. The workflow formalism, which is very usual for business analysts and functional analysts, and the decision table will allow such a discussion and detail the different cases of the application business rules. BDD Gherkin is a good approach to refine in detail with the business stakeholders the acceptance criteria at the level of user story, like I told you a little while ago. Discuss examples and formulate the scenario and automate the corresponding script. So depending on your objective and your application context, I would rather suggest that you use visual ATDD for a global vision of the feature and produce application or inter-application tests, and or use the Gherkin to script tests at the user story level. I've just got a quick visual of the visual ATDD in practice. So typically a business analyst, product owner who envisions a feature, right, can kind of quickly put together visual workflow and use this as a basis for driving the Three Amigos meeting with all the participants. So a typical tool like ours will allow this to be kind of downloaded from, let's say, Jira to the testers workstation to kind of elaborate this further, make it more concrete. It's a natural progression, by the way, and the testers can revert back to the business analyst. If let's say, for example, Jira is in use, this becomes a two-way integration. They push it back to the analyst to kind of convey their views about the whole workflow. And assuming that it is refined and everybody is in the same page of understanding, the testers can then now collaborate with the automation engineer to bring in the right granularity to define the keywords itself. And this cycle goes on. So if you look at it, the visual ATDD, while it is kind of put in practice with the right set of tools, it kind of boosts the productivity of the testing team itself, right? So that being said, what I will do is I'll quickly jump into the demo I wanted to show you today using our tool Jest. So what I will do is some of the key points that I discussed about visual ATDD, I will kind of explain in the tool itself to concretize my view of how this visual ATDD is put in practice. So if you recollect the information I shared about visual ATDD representation, the workflows and decision tables, this is what it is, right? But I'm using another example to break the monotony so that we don't go with the same thing. So I've used here one of the samples, which is a meeting room booking application, and the workflow here that you see in front of you represents this itself, right? If you spend a moment to kind of look at this visual representation, I'm sure you will not have any difficulty in understanding the flow itself, right? So this is what it looks like within the visual ATDD context. And if I want to explain these workflows, right? So it has the simple structures, elements that you're familiar with while drawing workflows, right? So you could have used a BPMN tool or a simple flowchart. These are similar, right? Excepting that these represent the test actions within a workflow. Now let me show you these small grids. The icons that you see here is the one that represents the decision table itself, that kind of elaborates the scheme of things a little bit detailed, right? So let me click on one to show you how it looks. As you can see, these refer to the refining of expression within the acceptance criteria at a user story level, right? Each row corresponds to one of them, and you will also see that some of them are some additional information available here. Objective, for example, right, kind of help in producing meaningful names when the tests themselves are generated out of this visual workflow, which I'll show you in a short while. And as you can see, I've got columns here that kind of represent the requirement ID, or it could be the user story ID if in case you are into agile. So the tool supports both. And I can also have project management, the test management elements into the design itself by tagging each of these with the risk side or priority, whatever you want to do. Let's say, for example, I have this to add something new which is completely customized, right? And what it does is, with the requirements or user IDs tagged, you have the ability to have a two-way traceability throughout your test cycle. And when you have risks or priorities associated, or whatever is the need that you have in your project, then when I'm generating the test, right, which I'll show you shortly, you have the ability to bucket all your tests for specific categories, right? So that you know how you would best use your time box within a test project. Now, let me not spend too much time here. Let me show you how the tests get generated when I have this workflow with the decision tables. So I click on generate tests and click on start generation. The tool YEST, which is what I'm kind of demonstrating you today, is kind of able to parse through this workflow and look at each of the decision tables to see what is the optimal way to kind of use this information to generate the uh, bare minimum test for the coverage that is required. Let me click on OK, and you see here on the left hand side I've got all the tests generated. Recollect what I was just telling you, these names, right? Successful login and booking confirmed, or successful logging, the room is under maintenance. All these names are from the objectives I've set for my test, right? Now, typically in a project, what you do is you have the developers using an IDE, right? So think of this tool as an IDE for the tester itself. I just showed you the test generation. So let me click on the test part to kind of show you in detail. So if you recollect, I don't know if this is kind of, are you able to see the visual component as well, or is this hiding? I'll just collapse it just to make sure it's visible. So if you see it, like I showed you in the presentation, we've got a textual format as well as a visual format for each of these test cases that's generated, right? The scenarios that's generated. And let's say I kind of I'm just showing you this as an example. There are so many things that you can do. I'm just kind of removing one, I mean, which I'm allowed to do. Then I have the tool telling me an immediate impact on kind of what's gone bad. It tells me right away that I've got the login part of it is not covered very well. This impact analysis is immediate. So when I have something that I do within my test project, it gives me a complete control over how I'm handling the coverage, and also it gives me the ability to kind of go fix my problems in terms of either changing the requirement depending upon what's happened in the project, or the test assets that I've kind of generated here. So in this particular case, let me quickly delete this where I don't need to do it, but I'm just kind of demonstrating here. I'm kind of regenerating the test, and it has just kind of put back what I've just messed up with, right? And let me just kind of look at what the dashboard says. It's perfect. Everything is green. So in addition to such things, the testers have many features like auto completion. Your ability to refactor the test is much higher, because you can go and incrementally change what you see is fit in the testing. And you also have well, this is Uday Kumar. This is for the functional testing, like I indicated earlier. So the white box will not be part of this. So we will have more things to answer in the Q&A, so that the basic thing is covered, by the way. So we have the ability to have assisted data definitions. What you see here on the left hand lower corner, I can use in my definitions here. If you can see, I have usernames and password as a parameter that I've kind of defined while designing the test itself, and I've used within my visual design, right? And what it means is that in a typical cycle where we have the automation engineer kind of do the data definitions and kind of start as if it's only the domain part which is clear, and he will do everything from scratch, is kind of now done away with. We are already kind of helping the automation team do part of their work here with this data definition, and adding the data elements to it, the input data. We are giving them the ability to data drive even while designing the tests. itself, right? And again, all this input data, what is kind of represented here, can be imported from an existing source. Let's say you have an okay, Uday Kumar, I get your point, but I'll just be addressing it at the end if you do not mind. Apologies for that, right? Um, so thank you, thanks Uday, thanks for the understanding. So what we will do is this input data table can be imported from a spreadsheet, let's say if you have it in that format. Now let me show you how this get combined, right? So I am going to create a test campaign, which is, you think of it as an execution cycle where you have the test for particular iteration to be focused. So I am going to select all the tests that's been generated here, but remember, these tests are skeletal at this point of time, right? So I am having the tool do all these comparisons. Let me also show you this, right, before I proceed further. All my data, be it the application data or what browsers I'm going to use, or each of this are kind of category by itself to make it more manageable. And now I go back to my campaign, I'm able to kind of select them all, and the tool gives me the ability to generate combination. I'm clicking on generate combination. I have the option of just having one input data row for each of these scenarios, or I have multiple combinations possible. And in between these both, I can add a filter to kind of have a subset which is in between this two extremes, which is one or all, right? But for simplicity's sake, let me choose all combinations and click on generate. And as you can see, it combines all this data together, right? For all, I would choose typically when I'm using an automation, execution automation in place. So let me click on OK for this. So what I have done thus far is that I have visually represented my tests, expressed my business rules in a grid in the form of a decision table, and I have generated my tests with the tool's assistance to go through various flows. Imagine this is a simple workflow, right? When I have a complex workflow, the complexity is again hidden from a user level. Again, let me just kind of show you one feature. I can add a sub workflow and have some of these workflows in as part of it, and use it within this workflow. That way I can nest as much as I want, hiding the complexity, maintaining a view level for me to have the best discussion with my team, and yet use all of that complexity to generate my tests, right? Let me delete this. Okay, so that being said, this is what I've done thus far. I've used a workflow, I've got the decision tables, and I've generated tests, and I have combined my data points and the associated input data for those data points within my campaign. Now I can easily publish this. As you can see, we've got many publishers. I'll talk about the integration bit in a while. I'll just choose an Excel format to kind of generate the concrete tests here, right? Let me choose this ability. I'm clicking on publish. Just a quick summary of what all are kind of expressed as part of this particular test generation I've done. And you see here the test scenarios that we have seen visually and in the textual format is elaborated with the actual data itself imbibed in it. This way, my execution team can pick up this and execute it manually with the test steps and the data combined together with all the combination possibilities. Makes life very, very easy. And in addition, I've got the requirements covered as part of this test execution highlighted as well. That's the traceability I was just talking about. Yep. So while I kind of told you that I'm publishing into Excel, it is not limited just to this. I mean, I have various possibilities of publishing into so many environments here. right? Let me just kind of talk a bit about the tool integration itself. Jest integrates easily and efficiently into your tool chain without a problem. Jest has connectors for a plethora of test execution frameworks: Selenium, UFT, Robo Framework, you name it, we've got it. And supports a lot of test repositories and management tools, Jira being one of them. We've got a very beautiful integration with Jira, which is two-way, that improves the collaboration to the highest level possible. And we've also got it for ALM, TestLink, and there's so many others available. And not to mention version controlling with Git itself. It practically becomes a test process booster by accelerating the test production in your toolchain, right? That being said, the last part I wanted to show you today is, if you recollect my presentation earlier, so we have the ability to kind of produce the manual test, but we can also publish to test automation scripts from here. So I am not the best person within my company, but I will try to show you the closest that we can. So in this particular example, I am going to publish to Java Selenium, right? So the keyword for this is kind of already given to me by my automation team, and this is what I can configure here. It's a very simple method, and I can associate some of these high level elements of what happens within my test with the individual keywords provided by my automation team. And I have the ability to kind of generate the automation scripts by a click of a button, by clicking on publish, right? Let me just kind of open where that goes. Okay, just to make sure that this is the new ones created. Let me go and publish again. Okay, they are here. Let me just pick one to show you what we've got here. I don't have the execution framework itself on this PC, so I can only show you the script for now. So as you can see, the tool will publish the automation script from out of the visual representations, the workflows that I've just shown a while ago. Yep. And this is the beauty of what we just spoke about, right? In terms of representing things in a visual workflow, and your ability to kind of respond to changes within your project is much higher in terms of how we produce the test. Yep. So that's long and short of what I wanted to show you in terms of comparing the approaches of visual ATDD and BDD Gherkin, and I just kind of shown how that works within visual ATDD using Jest as a tool, and we are open for QA. I think Uday Kumar, thank you so much for the patience. So you have kind of posted a few queries. So let me just kind of open the chat window to see more about what you have just kind of mentioned. Okay, Uday Kumar has posted a few, so I can just kind of go one by one. Can this be used for API testing as well? Yes, it definitely can. Let me just add one point. That's a wonderful question, Uday Kumar. As a matter of fact, unlike some of the existing tools, we consciously wanted to work on optimizing the test design with whatever I just spoke to you about. So the automation framework that is used for the test execution is consciously kept outside of the test design, so that when we publish into an environment, the interface can be anything. It can be an API, a web services, it can be UI based. So we don't want to put a monolithic block of test management, test design, and test execution together. So we have consciously kept it out, and which is one of the reason why we can easily plug into your your tool chain, right? And Uday has another question. You have Jira. in your, okay, that's wonderful. I mean, if you have Jira, we have a beautiful integration, two-way integration with Jira, given the fact that we are looking at many companies moving towards the agile world, and Jira being a leading player there. We have a beautiful integration with Jira. Can fetch requirements from Jira and execute that if it has to execute using BDD definitions. Can I upload this to use? Yeah, I guess I understand part of it. It's possible, but you know what I would do, Uday Kumar. I have my contact here, so you know we can kind of discuss this in detail in terms of your particular requirements. I can talk about much more in detail. Yep. And in terms of the focus here itself, you know, we are positioning our tool in the functional testing space. So that would be for one of the questions you have asked about the mini performance test that you spoke about. And DevOps, yeah, I don't have much of a problem here in terms of DevOps as well, right? So it's kind of, as I told you, it's not a monolithic block, so we can do a lot of things here. And Raghavendra Pujari, right? Your question about telecom protocol testing, right? So, we have specifically optimized um, our tools for the enterprise information systems market. But in terms of domains, we have not made specific restrictions in terms of how you can do design. And if you're specifically asking about protocols like SIP or IPsec or SDP, right, we don't have the content readily, because you know that's where we think there are people with specific domain knowledge who would be creating content with the tool. So we have a beautiful platform for creating content, so that much I can tell you for sure. But we can talk in detail as to how things will proceed for a particular requirement you have. Michelle has a question about, I understood your point being that Visual ATDD enables to cover the entire test pyramid, while BDD Gherkin tends to pull the test level down to unit test level. Is that a correct understanding? Well, as I was indicating a little earlier, it's about how we position each of these methods, because I would kind of say that it's about where each of them fits in beautifully well and delivers the value. So Visual ATDD, you can think of it as covering functional test at end-to-end level, right, which would be very difficult for BDD Gherkin to do, because it would make it way too complex and unreadable. And if I want to quote my presentation again, right, I've kind of indicated about the shared language, right, which is the essence of what we are talking within Agile, that would be lost. On the DevOps bit of it, Uday Kumar, as I told you, we have kept the tool, to be focused on the test design part, and the ability to have whatever test repository you want to have, or if in your pipe, DevOps pipe, you have the ability to push the test to a specific context, within how you manage it in your organization, or you have an execution framework based on specific technology, Selenium or UFT, right? We have consciously kept that out of our product scope, so that the test design is optimized and we can use your existing tool chain, right? And that again includes how you operate within the DevOps as well, right? So that way we give the flexibility for the customer to use their setting, what they are comfortable with already, in terms of various components within their testing practice, and they don't need to go and rediscover just because we impose something on them, right? So the integration with DevOps and other environments is possible with what we are talking, because the scope of this activity itself is producing tests, right? So but if you have something in specific, I'd be more than glad to kind of have a discussion with you. My contacts are here, we can talk about it. Any other questions? Well, while I wait for any new questions to pop up, I have my contact information right here. Just in case some of you would want to really see the visual ATDD approach in action, in terms of how it can improve it further within your specific setting. uh, you can contact us. We can give you a much more detailed demo to look at the specific approaches we can take to enhance your testing practice. Okay, there's Michelle who has a question. Can you share the productivity gains in test design? Yes, brings usually. Thanks, Michelle, for this particular question. As a matter of fact, I've didn't talk in detail about this aspect. Um, I hinted upon it while doing the presentation. This is one of the best elements, I would say, of our technologies, right? So if you ask me, um, even while kind of implementing your test project, YEST can easily bring in a 20% productivity gain. Why? Because you are, I mean, this is again a conservative estimate, because you are kind of having an IDE effect that optimizes how the tester works, and you are having the publishers and the integration with tool chain that kind of knocks off so many unproductive activities for just this conversion or communication between various tools in your chain. And more importantly, when you are kind of using platform like Jira and integrate with our tool, and even without that, the collaboration bit is super enhanced, for the simple reason that you are able to discuss the need, the expression of need in agile in the most efficient way possible. So thereby, even while this is especially true given the fact in reality today we have all the teams kind of geographically dispersed and sitting at various places, and when you go to maintenance phase, the productivity becomes even higher, running into 50-60%, for the simple reason that the maintenance is the easiest within YEST. When you are looking at using the YEST platform to kind of make changes and address the change requests coming in and produce tests faster. Well, if there aren't any new questions, I thank everyone for being around today to be part of this seminar. I'm sure that given the prevalence of agile practices in many projects today, this is a key topic for us to kind of look at and explore in terms of how we meaningfully employ the visual approaches, visual ATDD, and also look at where these apply vis-a-vis the standard BDD Gherkin approaches. So thanks everyone for joining us today, and I'll pass the control back to Anil and Krunal to see where we go from here. Oh, thanks Somesh, thanks for the comment.
Sure.
Appreciate it.
Right, absolutely. Thank you, Prabhu, for the presentation. Thank you, Samesh, and thank you, Prabhu. Indeed, a very insightful presentation, and thank you for all the support from your side. Also, I would like to thank all the attendees, present in the webinar. And if you still have any queries post this webinar, you can write to us at conference@stepinforum.org, and we'll definitely try to help you out. And with this, I would like to thanks and wish all a good day ahead. Yeah, ending the conference right now and the webinar. Thank you.
Thanks, Runal. Thank you, Prabhu, for this insightful webinar. Thanks a lot, everyone, for joining.
Thank you.
Thank you.